Ready? Good evening. And welcome to our in-person audience and our Zoom friends to Advance Arlington's March program, Leaning In and Examining Gender Equality. I'm Jean Broyhill, Advance Arlington's board chair, and have been a board member since 2010 and still enjoying it. March is International Women's Month, and we try to align our programs as much as possible with the month-long recognitions that are usually designated every year. Despite the extreme events we are currently experiencing, particularly in the DMV, for many women, leaning in still remains a hot topic of conversation, as it was when it was first introduced in 2013 by former Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg. As a sidebar conversation, if you have any program ideas, please let us know. Our volunteer boards members who make up the program committee are always looking for ideas. Just go to our webpage at advance-arlington.org, go to contact us, and let us know your ideas. We will be back in touch with you. We provide another reminder, are just to those who are new to us, we are not advocates of causes or promoters. We provide a balanced forum for discussion. That's our job. A couple of housekeeping matters before we start. First, I am honored to recognize Advance Arlington's major sponsors listed on this slide. Sponsors, if you're listening, thank you for your generosity in supporting this important space that we offer. Also, thank you to our other sponsors of this program year and to all who have renewed your membership or signed up as a new member. All of the monies and funds that you provide support our operational and technical expenses and ensures that a place like Arlington, Advance Arlington, remains a part of the fabric of our community. Information will be available soon on how you could become a sponsor for Advance Arlington's yearly fundraiser on June 11th, and we hope to see you there. Mark your calendars also for the next program on April 9th here at Level Run and on Zoom, which is What Does Aging in Arlington Look Like? A very timely topic considering the tsunami of elderly already aging in Arlington and the many more of us hitting that era of life right around the corner. We will have a Q&A session after the program. We've already received several questions on Zoom, but that will come later. So just hold off while we have a little bit of discussion with our panelists, which will be very shortly. It is now my honor to introduce Kathleen McSweeney as tonight's moderator, a model we have been using for the last several months of having moderator and discussion with the speakers, not a lot of panel slides and speeches, but just giving more opportunity for questions. Kathleen has been 37 years as an Arlingtonian, and she has served on more local nonprofit boards, coalitions, advisory commissions, and working groups, far too many to mention here. You can triple all your 2 hands and your 2 feet, and it's still not getting to the number that she's done in her life here in Arlington. Currently, she is serving as secretary for the NAACP Arlington branch and secretary of the Arlington Democrats Latino Caucus. And on top of all that, she has a full-time job as an IT professional in the daytime. Kathleen, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jean, and Advance Arlington. It's really an honor to be here tonight with all of you. So we are living in the year 2025. We are 105 years out from the year women won the right to vote. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which made it unlawful to deny a credit card or a mortgage on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, or age, was passed 50 years ago in 1974. And yet we are still having this conversation. I read a Wharton Business article from just the other day, March 4th, that indicates white women earn 84 cents on the dollar as compared to white men, a gap which is largely unchanged since 2002. In 1982, women actually earned 65 cents on the dollar, so we are doing a little better. And it isn't a question of whether a woman is a mother or not. That often, comes up. But per the Pew Research, the gender gap is the same, whether you're mother or not. So the gap isn't performance-based. Per the US Department of Labor in 2023, the wage gap for Black women is about 31% of what a white man earns, and it's 43% for Latinas. And per the Human Rights Campaign, they report that trans women earn about 40% less. 13 years ago, in 2012, in the Atlantic magazine, Anne-Marie Slaughter wrote an article that got a lot of attention called "Why Women Still Can't Have It All." In it, she listed the difficulties facing working women and recommendations for changes that could help women achieve a work-life balance. Joining us tonight are three women who have very demanding professional careers and family responsibilities. And for the next hour, we're going to have a conversation on this and related topics. So now I'm going to introduce the three women. The first is Kate Bates. Kate Bates serves as president and CEO of the Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Kate was appointed to this role in June 2014 after an extensive national search. She began her tenure with the Chamber in 2007, serving in areas of increasing responsibility. And under her leadership, the Chamber increased their business advocacy efforts with notable state and local successes, including the local approval of the Amazon Performance Agreement, leading to their second headquarters in Arlington, as well as increased focus on belonging within the Chamber, including the creation of Women in Business programming. Prior to joining the Chamber, she worked for Women in Government, a national nonpartisan association of women state legislators. Kate served as the past chair of the Virginia Chamber of Commerce Executives. She also serves on the Arlington Economic Development Commission, the Arlington Alexandria Workforce Investment Council, the Leadership Center for Excellence Board of Directors, and participates actively in a number of additional regional organizations. She received the Outstanding Young Virginian Award from the Virginia JCs in 2014. She's been honored under the Leadership Center for Excellence's 40 Under 40. Her achievements continued to be celebrated in 2017 as she was named a Washington Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree. Kate's impact was further recognized in 2019 by the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, where she was selected as a 40 Under 40 honoree for her notable contributions to both community and the chamber industry. She's a graduate of George Washington University with a BA in Political Science and International Affairs, as well as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation's 4-year Institute for Organizational Management Training and Programs. She is also a graduate of both Leadership Arlington and Leadership Greater Washington. Originally from small town Illinois, Kate and her husband Ronnie have made Arlington their home, along with their newborn daughter, Nicole. Next, we have Monique Bryant, who goes by Mo. Mo Bryant is an accomplished and passionate leader in the realm of social justice. She has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to creating positive change in communities. With a profound appreciation for the power of dialogue and empathy, Mo has successfully created countless brave spaces for individuals, organizations, and communities to engage in meaningful discussions about culture and belonging. Her leadership and capacity building skills have empowered participants to explore uncomfortable truths, challenge systemic biases, and ultimately cultivate a collective commitment to belonging, guided by empathy, integrity, and active community engagement. And last but not least, we have Candice Lopez. Candice Lopez has been devoted to social justice over her 25-year career. Her journey began with a deep interest in gender disparities and understanding interpersonal violence, leading her to work with local and national nonprofit and government organizations to protect vulnerable communities. Candice is passionate about advocating for equality and has collaborated with grassroots organizations, led community initiatives, and influenced policy reforms. Candice graduated from the University of Colorado with bachelor's degrees in psychology and women's studies and earned a master's of public administration from George Mason University. She is a proud Arlingtonian, wife, and mother, and currently serves as assistant director at the Arlington Department of Human Services and is a principal consultant at Van Lopez Consulting. She is also a board member of the Animal Welfare League of Arlington and part of the Leadership Arlington's class of 2025. Please join me in welcoming these three ladies to the conversation. And I'm going to join you right over here. So welcome, and thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So my first question, thinking about the Anne Marie Slaughter article, do you believe that this is an outdated concept, or is it still a valid goal for women today in terms of having it all? And what does it mean to you to have it all? I'm going to start here with Candice.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. The last part of your question is how I would answer this one. Is it depends on what it means, right? If having it all means having the equitable partner, the career, the clean house, the 2.5 kids, I think that's outdated. If it's what I think it is, which is about choice, about having the choice to decide what you want to do and having the means to follow that choice, to me, that's what having it all is. And I don't think that's outdated at all. And I think that we're struggling right now to ensure that everyone does have choice to follow their dreams, their hopes. So I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Thank you. So I would agree that it is outdated in the determination of who defines what having it all is. Is it the 2.5 children? Is it a white picket fence? Is it a dog or a cat? It is about wellness to me. Wellness means having it all. Wellness in how we raise our families, wellness in the choices that we make, wellness in our career, finding an equitable place of belonging in our endeavors, whether it is through our employment, through our volunteerism, through programs like this. What is our wellness?
Yeah, I would agree with both my colleagues here. I think that lots of times when people say having it all, they often mean career and family. And I would say that, yes, I do believe it is very possible to have both of those things. So again, I sent an old bio, my apologies. My daughter's 1 now, so I've been through my first year of being a parent. And it's interesting, even in this day and age, the number who are so surprised, after 10 years as CEO of the chamber, when I was having a baby saying, well, what does this mean? Are you still going to be able to do your role? Are you thinking of going part-time? The number of people who had lots of strong opinions about the amount of leave I was taking, and it was actually people telling me it wasn't enough, not the other area of things. So I think that there's still some reframing that needs to be done about what people can do, that yes, you can, as a woman, have a career and also be a parent as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful answers as well. And thank you for your patience as we move the mic back and forth. You talked about a little bit about equity too. And so I did want to kind of bring that in, because I think men face challenges as well that aren't always that different, right? Research points to the rise of male malaise, with high achieving women often outperforming men in school and in the workplace. So I would note 3 years after her Atlantic article, Anne Marie Slaughter wrote a book called Unfinished Business. And I listened to an interview with her in preparation for this. And she said that she could never have written that book, back in 2012 when she had written the article, because she didn't know enough about the challenges facing families. And so she had heard from many men in the interim about the societal pressures that they faced to be breadwinners. And they would like to spend more time with their families. She'd gotten a lot of feedback. So men often face the same difficult choices we're facing here. So what needs to change so that both women and men can achieve work-life balance?
Do me start.
Put Candice in the hot seat for every question. So, I'm going to reframe this a little bit. So, I think it's important to acknowledge that families come in all shapes and sizes. And, families with children can be one parent, can be two parents, can be different genders, same gender. There's a lot of different family structures. And I think that's one of the things that's beautiful about Arlington, is that I think there is that understanding of that in Arlington. And I think that, traditional gender roles, back to speaking from my experience, that, people asked me a lot more questions about how long I was taking for leave. Nobody asked my husband that. Nobody asked my colleagues that when I had male colleagues who were having children. So I think there is still some of that societal pressure, but at the same time, I'm also seeing, more and more men take parental leave. I know instances where, there was a mixed gender couple and the man was the one who's staying at home with a small child. So I think more and more that's becoming common and accepted. And I think, the understanding that, caregiving is important for any and all parents and family who are involved as well. So I think that's a positive change that we're continuing to see as well.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think it starts with, again, having dialogue. It is some of the uncomfortable truths, which are societal norms. The narrative is that the gender roles are the gender roles. Males are determined to be the breadwinner, having strong feelings, not allowed to show emotion, not be the nurturers or the caretakers. Women are, by narrative, supposed to be home with their children for a certain amount of time. They're the first person that are called. If you look at like emergency contact forms, even now, the first person that they list is mom's name, first name, last name, phone number, and second is dad. And that is because of societal norms and the narrative of gender roles. So I think when we have uncomfortable dialogue that leads to truth of what the narrative is, and we start to really look at that, that's how we start to change societal expectations.
Yeah, I mean, again, agree and just echo, what you were saying, Kate, around the leave. I think the more we can normalize men taking leave, right, the more they will, not just for family, but also for themselves. I don't think I've ever seen my husband take a sick day. I encourage him to, but even when he's sick, he goes to work. Like there is this expectation, I think, too, that men can't take that leave sometimes. And then I would also say, we need to encourage there to be spaces for men. I think that we oftentimes don't have a lot of affinity spaces for men. We need positive spaces that aren't going to breed necessarily misogyny, but breed really a culture of support and a culture of normalizing that men need those spaces too. The last thing I would say is that I think we're all expected to do more with less time, less money, less everything. And so again, the more we can, what you were saying, bring people together and have that dialogue and conversation, the more we can really get to the root of what the issues are.
Actually, I have
Oh,
one.
fancy that.
Thank you, Jane. And so I wanted to, each of you is a mom. You've mentioned your moms. And so we actually got a question before this when people were signing up, they were able to ask questions. And the question we got was, what is the one suggestion, only one suggestion you have for a working mom who is struggling to balance home and work responsibilities? And I'm going to take a first crack at that one, actually, because my answer to that would be, since we're limited to one in this question, I would say choose the right life partner, somebody who actually supports you and what you're doing. As I would say, my life partner is here tonight and actually drove me here so I could be here on time. So thank you, Michael. But the question is, what is the suggestion you have for a working mom who is really struggling to find that balance?
One thing, one answer. Can I make it two-part? So I read a book years ago, and the title's escaping me at the moment, but it talked about shifting from work-life balance to work-life harmony. So many times we're putting ourselves in the silo of work and we're only work, and then when we get home, we're shutting it down, but there's still those lingering thoughts, the task list that didn't happen, the email that we had to send. And so personally, myself, you feel like you can't be fully present because you still have those lingering thoughts. But when you start to shift to that harmony, it's okay that if when my kids are having their iPad time, not much, but a little bit of iPad time, to send that last email. There's not that pressure that I had to do it in that time frame. Or if I need to take a call from the school during my workday, to take that time to have harmony. So I don't feel like the parent that missed everything or the partner that missed everything. And the way that I started shifting in the harmony is something that I was telling someone else recently is ABCs, they're easy to remember, is acknowledging that right now I'm not meeting that moment of being okay, of having that balance or that harmony, breathing, taking a deep breath because it's hard, and then connecting back, whether it's work or home, to find that harmony a bit.
I like that, the ABCs of harmony.
I would add, finding your community. You can't do it alone. So whether that's a supportive partner, whether that is a faith community, whether that is a parents group at school, right? I think it's finding that community and taking time to build those relationships. I think it's very easy to not spend time strengthening those relationships because we're so busy. But I would almost say prioritizing those relationships can help us in the long run by having that network of support so that when we do get busy, we have people to call on to support us and help us through those times. And I think sometimes we really lean on family, but not everybody has family they can lean on. So go in the community, find your people, create that space.
Those are beautiful answers. Mine's going to be way less beautiful and way more boring. Organize and outsource would be, my tips is that, I live by schedules, weeks. Every week we figure out who's doing daycare drop off and pick up because it changes because my work schedule changes every week with when I have evening events, when I have early mornings. So organization is key, and the outsourcing gets to that lean on community. It may be outsourcing. My husband is the one who does the dishes every night. It's beautiful. He doesn't mind it. I don't want to be doing all the bottle parts at the end of the day and all the pump parts and all those wonderful things. So it can be outsourcing within your own family. It can be, again, finding out what tasks make sense to just cut off your list completely and leaning on whether it's others for childcare, whether it's, again, if you're fortunate to have, whether it's a partner or faith community or family locally, whatever it is, who are those people that can take some of those things off your list? Because again, while you can have all these things, you don't have to be the one that does every single item.
All right, now what I'd like to do is, yes, I'd like to take a question.
I have a stentorian voice. Really want me to use? Okay. So my mother had 5 children, one every 5 years, 25 years of diapers. And we were not necessarily neat. We were messy. And she didn't mind. We made mud pies and tracked the mud in the house, and we made her light dusty gray pink, which was the color of the decade, rug filthy. And it drove my godmother, who was neat as a pin, crazy. And my mother said, you know what, to all of us, let it go. No one will ever carve on your tombstone. You had a clean rug. Do what matters. We're so under pressure in society to be perfect, to look good, to speak well, to have a clean house. In reality, what difference does it make, right? Let it go. You don't have to be perfect. Do something that matters.
Yeah, that's great advice, actually. And I will say that we have 3 sons, and the youngest 2 are twins. And I will say that I was a very type A person with our first son. It pains me now to think about it. And we realized when we were outnumbered that, we had to let some things go. I was not going to have a clean house, and that was just the way it was. Anybody else? Yes.
I just want to add that in all of your answers, they're all really awesome, but also the government needs to support parents with child care policies that are family friendly and work policies in the workplace and the expectations of society at that level, because we really fall short on that in this country big time.
Absolutely, fully agree. And I mean, I know we can talk about both federal and state and paid leave. There's a lot of work that, again, that the chamber is now taking on about childcare. Arlington County a number of years ago, when Katie Crystal was on the board, did some great initial steps in terms of, again, making childcare goals of making it more accessible and affordable. Some initial steps, things like taking away a somewhat arbitrary requirements for lead teachers who have an associate's degree, instead replacing that with hours and training specifically on childcare. Again, I don't care if a childcare teacher for my 1-year-old has taken a geometry class. I want them just to be a childcare professional. So removing some of those artificial barriers. But we're actually launching our Arlington Child Care Alliance this year. We've been working closely with the Community Foundation and others on what that would look like. But I know we all have the shared goals on we need accessible, affordable childcare. It gets to the choices that we talked about earlier. Again, when people think about, have it all, are people making the choice to, go back to work after having a child or staying home? For many, it's not a choice either way. For many, they have to go back to work because of financial reasons, but there's also many who have to stay at home because they didn't make as much in their job as what childcare costs. So I think, again, when we talk about, as Mo said so beautifully, making sure people have the choice, making sure that childcare is affordable is a very important piece of that. Now, there's also a lot of talk about workplace flexibility. And again, not just what the procedures are, but what the culture is. Those are hugely important. we also, in addition, have to realize there are certain types of work. If you work at a hospital, you can't work remote. You can't leave a little early. I mean, it's set shifts. The patients need you. There are certain lines of work that don't have really that privilege. So it's important when we think about policies that we think about really how they impact everyone as well. I'll get off my soapbox.
And
Pass down the line.
And
guys.
I would say, if everybody would like to answer that, what are the things that we need to do to make the work-life balance or harmony more difficult? And specifically, so Mo, you are the president or an executive director of a nonprofit. So, speaking sort of from that lens, what do you think would need to change?
Ooh, how long are we here? Back to what you said again. It's perception, right? And being able to see you have a baby, to see Katie Crystal have a baby, to see Christina have a baby. These are people in leadership roles. It's okay, because for so long it was that we had to seek permission to do both, right? To live our most authentic life. Flexibility, have it being widely accepted that women are in roles and they have families and they have responsibilities, they have capability, credibility. Back to your point, it is there are some requirement that government needs to step in to say, it's hard. I mean, my youngest is 10 and I still remember when we found our daycare. I give them shout outs now, 10 years later, Funshine, because it is so imperative to have good childcare. You are leaving your most precious commodity and you're expected to work. I mean, we've heard this phrase, it's expected to work like you don't have children like you don't work. And finding that rhythm is crucial, but it won't happen without supports.
It's not just children. A lot of us are also taking care of parents or elderly family members. And so it often falls to the woman, the eldest cousin or the eldest child in a family to do that, caretaking. But Candice, so you've worked in nonprofits before, but you also now work for government. You work for our local government. What are you seeing? I mean, what do you think are some of the things that could be done or maybe are being done to make the workplace more flexible?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are things that are already happening, right? Like I think COVID introduced the idea of hybrid working or, flexible working. And so Arlington County has really embraced that. And we're, really continuing to embrace that. There isn't a requirement to come back and really seeing where that can be flexible, but not for everyone, right? There's still those essential staff who have to be there in person no matter what. So I think where we could see the growth from there would be higher pay for essential workers, to outsource that caretaking they can't do because they can't work remotely or have the flexibility, right, that other people can. And we don't really see that yet, that kind of type of pay structure, right? I also think that, some of the things that we could see is, government really leading the way on ensuring that some of the rights that maybe we are seeing being challenged at the federal level are being incorporated into the local level. If we can't rely on EEOC policies anymore, what are the local governments doing to ensure that those protections are still in place for their workers, but also then, encouraging that among their businesses and among their local nonprofits. I think to your point about elder care, I'd love to see HSAs, right, to be able to put money in there for elder care and to expand the number beyond $5,000 health savings account. Right, so that we have more flexibility on how we can use that because the burden often falls to women. So how can we, build more scaffolding to really support women through these times?
Wonderful. And if you would pass it back to Kate.
Yep, universal health. Yes, yes.
Well, I was just going to ask you, as you lead the chamber, and I think there might be some ideas we have about who's in the chamber, and maybe you can either clarify those or dispel them, that they're mostly, working men and, who are leading organizations. And so how is that, is that even true here in Arlington? Because I know we have a lot of women who own businesses. And then how do you have, specific challenges leading the chamber?
Thank you. Great question. So, I mean, we don't track full demographic information because our members are also organizations. So everyone who works there is a member. But I would say, we started tracking demographics for our board, so we can speak to that and then certainly can see what you eyeball. And we are very mixed gender. Again, use a very strong female presence. Actually, give a shout out to Advance Arlington, a board member here, Karen Bate, no relation, although I gladly claim her, who founded Awesome Women Entrepreneurs. an amazing organization focused on women business owners that we were so grateful that when she was looking to move on from that, she and her business partner, Evelyn, then passed that along to the chamber. So that formed our Women in Business programming. So I am still riding high from our Women in Business Summit that we had on Friday, which was one of our most amazing events of the year. We had close to 140 women there. We had, small business owners, nonprofit professionals, corporate executives, people from all balances of life, all exchanging ideas, best practices, great networking, great educational sessions. We do that annually, and then we do our Women in Business networking events every other month. And women are integrated into everything in the chamber. My chair-elect is female. My past chair is female as well. We have a strong, again, female representation in our leadership. But it's still important because we, on occasion, get this question from men of why is there a Women in Business program? Because again, we have women throughout the chamber, but that provides that space for women to, again, really feel like they can be their full, most authentic selves. Again, we see that even people who attend some of our other events, when they attend there, they go a little bit deeper with the conversations. It's just a different mindset that people show up with. So that's been a really great way that we can provide that opportunity. But we are really proud of really the diverse makeup and composition of the chamber. We always say, it's not your grandfather's chamber.
Thank you. So are there any other questions actually from the audience? I didn't want to cut that off.
Thank you, ladies. I love the diversity of the panel and really appreciate everything you've already said. It's kind of an interesting question. So in the last couple years, there's been a resurgence, especially among young men, of antiquated notions of gender dynamics insofar as the idea of gender equality is even seen as a threat. How would you approach the conversation with these individuals who may be misguided in their beliefs, in my opinion, maybe tone deaf to historical and social shifts that are more relevant in today's society? Easy question, I know.
Well, since I lead a nonprofit that has difficult conversations, I'm going to take this one with grace. With grace. The premise that we have our conversations is that we know that they're difficult just because of words. Sometimes people have, they take issue with certain words, or they take issue with women leaders, or when women leaders decide to have children or run businesses or retire. We approach them with grace, with dignity, with integrity, but we stand firm in our convictions, and we let them know sometimes it's not indictment of their character if they don't know, if they're not aware. And when we're able to have those difficult dialogues and really stretch into the narrative and find out, where's the base, where's it coming from? In my experience, we don't have the dialogue to change minds. It's just to have the dialogue so that they can see and be educated on their own. When they do know, if they still feel the same way, then that might be an indictment of their character. But then that just means that they might not be in our immediate sphere of influence going forward. I firmly believe that those difficult dialogues generally lead to bold action that creates change. I've seen it. We keep striving for it. We talk a lot about the space, holding that space for people, right? Space for women in business, space for men in these, the narrative societal norms, space for people that lean a different way. That's okay. But having the dialogue about what's really happening. I hope that answered.
I think the only thing I would add, because I don't know that anyone can answer that better, is, I think making sure we don't shut down the conversation. I think it can be very easy just to not have the conversation. And the whole point is that exposure, is that other opportunity to see something different. And so, yeah, just echoing.
Great, thank you. And thank you for that question. I have a favorite quote, and it's from Audre Lorde, and she says, "I am not free while any woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." And so this leads to a question about sort of the responsibility we have to each other. So what responsibility do women have to help other women succeed, professionally or otherwise? And did you have a mentor who helped you? And if so, tell us about your experience.
So I already talked about our women in business programming, which answers kind of how I feel about that. That absolutely, I think it's vital that women support each other. That, you know, when a woman's in a position of leadership, it's her responsibility to make sure to bring up other people, but really look out for other women as well. I'll give, you know, two but short, you know, role model examples. So back to my days of women in government, it was our vice president who functionally ran our DC office. Was a woman who then went on to create what, again, a topic I wouldn't have been comfortable even talking about before I was a mom, but bags that you would carry to put breast pumps in that just look like normal purses. So you don't have to walk around saying, everybody knows what's in there. She's been a phenomenal leader and has been really a great role model for me. More recently and more kind of tangibly of that example of lifting up others, you know, when I was board chair, or sorry, when I announced my pregnancy, my board chair was Tina Leone, who had previously been the CEO of the Alexandria Chamber, actually, when she had her son. So she, you know, I had prepped, you know, here telling her the news, saying, no, I'm not leaving. Here's my coverage plan. Here's what we're going to do. And she just screamed with joy instead and said, you're having a baby. I'm so excited. I don't care about the rest of that. But she was an amazing champion that in any conversation was like, look, I did this. You can do this. Absolutely. Here's how this can be done. And it's funny, I thanked her so much for that. And I was like, what, you know, how can I thank you for this? And she said, no, pay it forward. Make sure that you're looking out for people, you know, again, who come after you. And while I haven't had the exact same opportunity there like she has, it's been really important to me to make sure, again, that, you know, when I started at the chamber before I was CEO, everyone there either had adult children or didn't have children. And the idea was that, you know, this wasn't really a place that would work for you because of the evenings, the schedules, that if you had kids. And now we have several staff members with young children as well. And it's been able to show that, yes, this is the sort of place where you can have a family and also a career as well.
Yes. So I was saying earlier in a conversation that you can't buy wisdom. And you can't. We're friends. We've been friends. I take strength from having friends with wisdom that have shared, women that have poured into me, that have encouraged me in my soul work, that have said, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can have it all. It is necessary. Goes back to the very basis of representation matters. Seeing a woman being able to do these things, to have a family, to have a career, if they choose, to have the choice, to be able to take care of their families, meaning their parents, their siblings, their children, their selves. And as far as a role model, my mother, she is fully present in every decision. She lived in a different era. She's seen a lot more things, and a lot of the same as some of my friends. And that wisdom that she pours into me, love, support, the wisdom and love that my friends pour into me. You got to have good friends. Back to your point, male and female, you have to have good friends. You have to have friends that are willing to be there, are willing to be that connect, that space. Yeah, I'm going to give that to you.
I would just agree that, you know, having a community of professional peers is critical. And sometimes it falls on you to build that. And so reaching out, making opportunity to connect with the people that you see, your colleagues, where you're like, oh, that person did something neat. I want to know more about that. Really making the effort to build those relationships goes back to the idea of community, right? To your point about thought partnership, that's why you need those peers, because you're going to have moments where you need that critical thinking and that support. And not always can your immediate people, like your friends and your family, provide that. It's nice when they can, but when they can't, you need that critical career component. So love the chamber, right? The places where you can find those groups, sign up for them, go out, put yourself out there. It's important.
Thank you. I'm going to take a stab at that one as well. I do agree, you know, community is so important. And it's funny, I grew up as an Air Force brat, so we lived all over the country. And I have lived in other parts of the United States. And I have to say, Arlington is really a big, small town. And granted, I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else, but by a lot. And so I've made a lot of connections. And I am always impressed by the generosity of people in giving you their time. Just the volunteerism here in Arlington is truly tremendous. But there are so many people I learned from when I first got here. I was in my 20s and I was volunteering, and there were women in their 30s, 40s, 50s who would, sort of take people under their wing and say, oh, yeah, this is how we do this, or, this is how you might want to do this. And I really appreciated that. And certainly, family is another great source of strength, and certainly the examples that the women in our family have set for us. I know, Jean, you had a question.
This is coming from a 70-something-year-old married woman without children, but I've been reading a lot about the evolution of the younger people coming into the business world, and I get this not portrayed very well, but do you sense that it's less problematic for them, the gender differences, that they've just been raised differently, more equal in terms of how they think about how males and females are treated in the workforce?
I would say it really depends on where they grew up and the communities they've been surrounded by. Because I think to this woman's point in the back, right, there are a lot of young men who are not subscribing to gender equity. And on the flip side, you have lots of people of male, female, non-binary, transgender folks who are fully embracing equality. And so I feel like we've got really two very different sides of a coin right now. And so I think it just really depends. I've seen both. Anything to add?
I would say for the younger generation, yeah, younger than I am, right? I guess I'm in that middle generation now. I feel that the generation that precedes me did their job, and I feel that we're doing our job because they don't have as many difficulties because we've been leading along the way, letting them know they can be who they are. They can choose whatever roles they want in life. They get to have a choice, right? They get to have a choice if they want to go to college, if they want to go to trade school. They get to have a choice about who they marry. They get to have a choice about, I know we're nonpartisan, but you get to have a choice. You get to have a choice of whatever it is for you. So I feel that this generation that preceded me, my parents' generation, they did their job because they taught me that I can. It didn't matter about my race. It didn't matter of, their background, that they grew up during segregation. It didn't matter that I was a young woman. So they did their job. And so I think our generation is pouring into the next generation that they feel equipped, they feel empowered, they feel bold, that they can make bold decisions for themselves, for their lives.
I do have some optimism around this as well. That was part of the question. That earlier question caught me a little off guard because I'm fortunate that I don't see a lot of that. That I do see more that, as people get younger, there is more understanding of, again, all different genders and different gender balance and different gender roles. And again, less of expectations around what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a man as well. So I think, that does bode positively for what things look like moving forward as well. And it really is all about that, making space for those opportunities.
Having a couple of 20-somethings, I would say this may not necessarily be the top issue for young people, right? They're facing climate change. They're facing a very tight job market. It's not, it was more mobile in terms of, when I was coming up, it was easier to find different jobs. We're having huge, rifts through the federal government. So, that's not looking like a great opportunity where it was, for younger people, 20, 30 years ago. So, but to the point and to the questioner's point, I do think that we also are seeing we continue to see very sort of dominant, sort of toxic male examples. And certainly they're not necessarily very close. Well, they're not in Arlington necessarily, but they are sort of close to home. So it is interesting to see what is going to happen in terms of the examples that are being set. Bullying is on the rise in a lot of our schools. And so there is a question of, there's so much chaos at the moment, and is that contributing to some of the bullying we're seeing? And bullying is, both genders do it. So I'm not picking on men in this particular case. Are there any additional questions? Oh, yes. Just wait for the mic.
I'd like to get back to a question or a comment that was raised about we need to have dialogue. And this is something that came up during COVID and during earlier political situations where the idea of speaking across the aisle to anybody is a very difficult avenue. And to be able to say, yes, we need to create a dialogue requires two people to participate. How do you go about doing that? Because I think in gender equality, whether it be transgender, female, male, etc., we have this very difficult time discussing. So I'd like your thoughts on how you open up that kind of dialogue and make sure this creates a positive outcome.
I would go back to the advice that Mo shared earlier about those individual conversations and approaching them with grace, that I think that, you can often make more of an impact when having direct conversations with someone, not conversations on social media, for example, that, you're often then just people, that incites a lot of emotion. But when you're actually sitting across the table from someone, looking them in the eye, you can get to know them as a person, and that's where you can potentially make a difference. But also, as Mo so beautifully stated, we also just have to accept that, there are some minds that just you cannot change about things, and that's an unfortunate reality. But I think figuring out where that limit is for you in terms of when it turns from a productive conversation into one that's not doing either party any good.
That was a great question. Thank you for that question. I think we're in a connection crisis. COVID exacerbated it for many of us. And we haven't quite come out of that connection crisis. The dialogues may not be easy because we just haven't had them. I think we have to lean into them. We have to know what our objective is. Why are we having a dialogue? We just want to have it because we want to talk about whether it's our differences or what we're seeing, women in business, whatever the dialogue is. And then we have to lean into that and realize we have to acknowledge there is a connection crisis. We are afraid to have hard dialogues because it's a hard moment. And if we don't have the hard dialogues, we will never change the outcome. It's absurd to me that we can't have hard dialogues, but that's what I do for a living. So that's unique. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, again, the only thing I would add is you said, both people have to come to the table. And I think that's the challenge is, yes, we have to have the dialogue and we have to create the space, but we also can't force someone to have that conversation with us. And so honoring that and knowing, to your point, Kate, where our line is and where we're not going to, coerce someone in a conversation and where we're going to save our own selves and walk away.
Candice, you also used to work for Project Peace.
Yes.
Right? And so does this resonate for you in terms of the work you did with Project Peace? This question about dialogue, and did you have dialogue across differences? Oh, yeah. Actually, give a background on Project Peace. That's a good idea.
Sure. So I was the coordinator for Project Peace, which is Arlington's coordinated community response to intimate partner and sexual violence. And so we were the county collaborative that pulled together all the different folks who might interact with a survivor or an offender and really providing the support that they need to get the services they need to end violence in our community. And so can you rephrase your question?
So actually, maybe I was thinking more of restorative justice, where you actually have somebody who has done wrong to somebody else, and both parties have to agree to be part of the conversation. And so that's a really hard thing, especially, I think, if you're the victim of violence or a crime. But we have a program here, and I believe it's run out of the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, called Restorative Justice. And Restorative Arlington, thank you. And the two people sit, if they agree, they sit across the table from one another. There is a facilitator, of course, and they talk through, I guess, however long it takes and how many sessions it takes, as long as they're both willing to come to the table. And so I'm wondering if that restorative justice model works in other situations.
I mean, I don't know a lot. I'm not a restorative justice practitioner, but from what I know about restorative justice, absolutely, right? Because restorative justice is all about creating that safe space, to your point, and having people opt into that space and putting all the parameters in place so that everyone feels safe along the journey of that conversation. So I absolutely think that we can talk about the tenets and the principles of restorative justice in bringing together these difficult conversations. I don't know if anyone else knows a little bit more on that.
A bit, but also something that I thought is also, we always talk about our guidelines, right? What are we coming into the conversation? What are our hard stops? Right? It can be a hard moment, but we're not going to shout at each other. We're not going to swear at each other. There's certain things that we're going to put in place knowing that it's a hard conversation. And if we need to step away, it's okay to step away in that moment. I don't often use safe space because sometimes it's not safe to bring up old harm. I do use brave because it is very brave to be courageous in talking about something, maybe a viewpoint or perspective that you had previously, being honest and open that maybe you don't have now. We all have biases. I have biases as well. It's a natural inclination. So I use brave, and we always start with guidelines in that difficult dialogue. But yes, to your point, you have to have somebody that's going to agree to have the conversation.
You know, one other thing I would mention, and specifically because she's not here with us tonight, but Devanshi Patel is on the board also of Advance Arlington, and yeah, and Devanshi runs a program here in Arlington that is actually geared toward youth, the Center for Youth and Family Advocacy, or she calls it CYFA, CYFA. And they have a lot of, and I'm focusing on young people because I sort of feel, not that if you're older, you are a little more set in your ways, and some of these hard conversations could be much harder. But certainly, you know, I think everybody can enter into honest conversations. But thinking about young people and serving young people so that they start thinking about the ways we can proactively and positively engage when we disagree. And that is some of the work that CYFA actually does here in the community. It's terrific work. And so, you know, thinking of Devanshi, I wanted to make sure to mention that. Jill, I wanted to ask, are there any questions on Zoom? Okay. Any additional questions here in the room? All right, then I'm going to close with the last question. And that this is just generally, as we're thinking about the conversation tonight and what we've discussed, what advice would you give to women, especially young women, aspiring to leadership roles, and in terms of navigating their career, their personal and their professional lives, and societal expectations for women? It's a big question.
How's that for a question to answer in a 30-second close? Looking at it broadly framing, I would say, you know, work hard and advocate for yourself. That, you know, I became CEO of the chamber at age 29. I was only the 5th person in the organization's now 100-year history to lead from a staff perspective. At the time, I was 29. My predecessor was 71 years old, and I was the first woman ever in the position and the youngest by far. But I felt comfortable even applying for the role because I'd worked my tail off and I knew I could do it. So some of it is you've got to put in the work. It can't just be, I want to be in leadership. You've got to be willing to do what it takes. But I think that the piece that can be hard for women is advocating for ourselves. We are often, this is a stereotype, so forgive me, but we are often very good at taking care of everyone else and looking out for others and being your friends, your colleagues, your supervisors, your team members, all of their biggest cheerleaders. But it's important to also advocate for yourself, especially if you do have a clear, specific goal. The last thing I would say is, you know, rather than just espousing for leadership, think about where you want to make an impact. You know, to me, that was always my goal, is that I knew I wanted to make an impact from small town Illinois. You know, I came out here to go to college. I thought I'd want to go into politics, did one internship on the Hill and said, this is not for me. I want to do the nonprofit space. And I am so grateful for that decision each and every day, and certainly this one as well. But think about where you want to make an impact and then set things up for that, and know that this is a lot more than just one, but know that leadership can look different ways that, perhaps it's not that leadership role at work, but it can be one in the community, or perhaps it's not one in the community, but it's one professionally.
Two things. Find your tribe, find your soul work. Your tribe are your people that are going to take care of you. They're also going to hold you to the fire. They're going to hold you accountable. They're going to tell you if you're making wrong decisions that they see. And they're going to lift you up when you fall down. And it's okay to fall down because we all do. Find your soul work. Kathleen's heard me say this many times. It's the thing that wakes you up that you say, I get to. We all say, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. But find your soul work, the thing that wakes you up that you say, I get to go do this today. Find your tribe, find your soul work.
I like how you put that. I'm going to go with two things too. I say trust your gut and find your balance. So trust your gut when you decide to stay or leave a job. There are jobs I stayed way too long in that were toxic workplaces and not a place that was going to let me thrive and grow. And so trust yourself. If it's not a good fit, it's okay to leave. The other thing is find your balance, the self-care, right? Find what works for you. Don't wait till you're burnt out. Start it now. Start it when you feel good so that you know what good is. And then be able to track when good doesn't feel good anymore, or when the work is changing or you're changing. And so that you can continue to grow where you need to and take space back when you need to. It's always okay to step away also from your soul work and to come back to it, because sometimes when you do your soul work, you get burnt out, you get traumatized from it. I work in domestic violence work. There have been times I've stepped away for a couple years, done something that isn't that work, and then come back to it. That's okay too.
So Kate, Mo, Candice, thank you so much for your time tonight, for your wisdom, and for this conversation. And everybody, please join me in thanking them.
Online. I just want to give a shout out to Daniel in the back of the room, who used to be a Advanced Arlington board member and now is head of a DWAI video production. So we're very pleased to have him here. And again, thank you for our panelists. You gave very good dialogue tonight. I'm very happy with that. And I love the fact that you validated that we're moving on and we're moving on well. That's a good thing to hear. Then I want to also remind you that we do have a program in April, and it's on Can You Age Well in Arlington? I encourage you to tune in for that on April 9th. And a big shout out to Doug Taylor, who I think is in the back of the room, and Amanda Molina, and Devanshi, who unfortunately is not here tonight, for pulling this program production together. So see you all in April.